G'day folks, in this video we're going to tackle the flaperons and got the wings on. Stay tuned. Okay, rather crude way of balancing my flaperons, just some bookshelf brackets with a 3 or 4 mil bolt, and at the moment they're just pivoting. So in the back I've got 3 holes where I'll put some fishing sinkers. A lot easier to add weight than take it off, and then we'll silicone it up once it balances. Okay, last video we were in the paint tent. Now got the wings installed. Looking fantastic, working from the front. Also fixed up my Berber lips, or the rubber lips. I ended up bolting those on. Heads on the outside on the top so you can't see the nuts when you're standing here, and heads on the inside at the bottom, and a bit more robust rather than just gluing those on. And the edge is nice and square now. Haven't put the cowl on yet, but that should be alright. Taken the muffler off. I got that on the bench, been to the muffler shop just to get a little elbow welded onto that. But really happy with my wings and my poor man's landing light, if you like. I sort of joke about that, but it's more for the nice big contrast. So if you're at the end of the runway, just a little added bit of contrast. So I thought it'd be a little bit different. Worked out well, really nice. Put the my pitot tube, which is here in the way, 4 rivets. Just recovered the hoses that I had positioned up in there and ran my pitot and static lines. Got the strut attached to the wing. Obviously the bolt is upside down if you go by your standards. So bolted on, torqued up. I think that was about 35-40 foot-pounds or something like that. Check your books. But another little tip there, I guess, is just partially put the bolt through, especially on the inboard side, so you get the nut started first. They're on and torqued up. Same as at the bottom. Struts all attached. Wing went on fairly well. I've just got the skin. I've just trapped it underneath this piece here. Haven't tried to fix that yet, but that should just pop out, go over the top. I haven't cut this out, so the leading edge bolt in the front spar I've put in the wrong way. So head at the back, nut forward. When I say the wrong way, standard practice is heads up or heads forward or heads outboard. The theory being that if the nut falls off, the bolt stays in. Well, I didn't want a big hole in the front here, so I've installed that bolt backwards. If the nut comes on, I've got bigger worries, and the trailing edge bolt has gone in nicely. You can see it down there with plenty of edge distance. Also hung my flaperons. Heads of the bolt are all out on all 4 stations. Viking have done a really good video on how to tighten these up properly. I don't know if you noticed, but when I painted these, I put a washer on these arms where it was hanging up, and also I put on the middle 2, when I was painting the wings, I put a bolt through with a washer, and that kept the paint. It kept the paint off this arm. You may just be able to see it. So anyway, I took the paint out, and this surface on the flaperon's not painted because it's very close tolerance. Made it much easier to fit these and get them working nicely. So I'm just going to clean up counterbalances. So I weighed those on the bench. I think I showed that in the last video. I'm just going to bog this up now, just make that a bit more aerodynamic. It'll add a tiny bit of weight. But that'll just clean this up nicely, just cover up that edge and repaint it. Standard stuff, heads of the bolts out, the joiner bolt in the middle there, and then we're going to start rigging. The main reason, I guess, for this video, I've jumped online, looked at other people's aircraft. There's a few known issues, one being when you go to full flap, the ailerons bind up. Now I've had a bit of a preliminary installation, if you like, and mine do exactly that. So roughly got it neutral, left and right, all's working well on the aileron. Drop the flaps down, they over travel, so I've got to work on my flap travel and reduce that somehow when there's no adjustment to do that. And when I do run the flaps down, the ailerons completely stop working. They actually bind up. I've only done the initial install, if you like, so I haven't adjusted anything. So part of this video, we'll jump in there and try and work it all out. I've got my cardboard on the side there just to mark neutral, but I'll try and step through that. When I do go online and have a look, very few people show you up in the hellhole, I guess. Asked a few people, varying results. Some people say, yeah, mine lock up. Other people didn't have a problem. There are a lot of variables. I guess the distance from memory, I think it was 17 to 19 mil, that gap in there. There's a variable there. There's a variable on your splice plates. That was 15 to 17 mil from memory. So you see what I mean? If one bloke's on the upper limits and another guy's on the lower limits. Also your wing incidence is going to play a big part on where neutral actually ends up on the side of your fuselage here. I know I've got 3 degrees, so I'm pretty happy with mine, but having that 3 degrees of wing incidence, and how did I come up with that? Well, the front wing spar slot shows you on the plan is at 87 degrees, so it's sort of telling me it needs to be 3 degrees positive. Up under here, you'll notice my rear wing skin basically sits on top of the door hinge. So some people have got half an inch, I've noticed. You just notice this in, by the way, when people are showing you, their seats or something, you'll see it in the background. So my wing is down basically on that hinge. So my build schedule is basically I have three or four days out here, I guess, then 2 or 3 days at home on home duties. So it gives me time to think about stuff. So I'm just sort of back from a bit of a break, but I'll show you up in here what's actually going on. Alright, so up inside here, my up elevator cable is on the bottom, down elevator cable is up on top. My rudder cables run through and between these. I've put some rubber on the torque tube just to stop, it can chafe away there, and there's also some spy wrap, or that clear plastic spaghetti stuff on there, so it's not hitting the metal tubes. Everything's nice and square. Part way through rigging, I've taken the nylocks off and just replaced them just for now, with castellated nuts, so you can just finger tight them. Now I've got the situation where everything's thread bound. The vertical rod is thread bound, horizontal rod is thread bound, like all the way in. This one's all the way in, top one's all the way in, and my flaps are about 1/4 inch away from neutral. Alright, so adjusting the flap lever, the little short fella, has allowed me now to get both flaperons to 0 and the stick relatively straight. I'm just eyeballing that off the centre console, so 0. Now I've got too much down, it's like not enough down on this side, too much up, running torque and 1/4 inch, and it's opposite on the other side, so we'll try and fix that. Okay, we're getting close. So I got my neutral set. I'm just going to adjust the stops now inside the centre console there. So 13 degrees up, 13 down, a little bit too far, just a stop adjustment, but I've got my travels. Bear in mind when the flaps go down, so flaps to 15 degrees, or my instructions, my plans say maximum of 15, so I guess 9 is okay, I don't know. So don't forget, from full flap you still need your 13 degrees down to retain aileron control while you have full flap selected. So we'll set that up. One issue I've got, and it gets a bit frustrating I guess, is in here in the centre console here with aileron control, when you go full right, see the castellated nut on the elevator pin can quite easily snag on that pivot bolt. So I'm going to have to, people don't show you this I guess, but so castellated nut with the split pin, full right aileron. I haven't put the stops in yet, but it'll be somewhere there. Yeah, it's going to be close, but in turbulence, and if this bolt spins around and get the head of the split pin at the 12 o'clock position, the cable will just perfectly snare on there. So I'm not sure how others have gone about that. I could run a fair lead, just pull the cable across a bit. I could put a little ski jump thing across the top of the bolt just so when it hits it can't snag. Just a bit more engineering to do. Alright, so flaps on and rigged. Took me a couple of sessions that, but now I've got sort of 0, 13, 13, and from 0 flaps will come down 2 degrees past there to 15 degrees flap down while still retaining, you know, aileron at full flap. How did I get to that? I was hoping to do a step-by-step video of how to rig your flaperons, but it's very complicated. Well, you can make it as complicated as you want. I wanted it sort of precise, so it took me a while. I've ended up with my vertical rods running up. They're thread bound, so the eye end's all the way in on both sides. So I can't lower the flaps in effect anymore. Once you get your flaps lined up, you can raise or lower neutral, which you're going to have to chase your tail a bit every time you make an adjustment, readjust neutral. So if both of them are high, you could adjust your vertical rods. Alternatively, you can adjust your flap lever. However, doing that, like if you wind that in a turn, the tube rolls down, and yes, it brings your flaps down. However, it changes the geometry on your triangles. Let's call them triangles for argument's sake. So that's your aileron bell crank. So your flaperon bell crank. So each adjustment has a side effect. That's where it sort of gets funky. So what I'd suggest, like I did, put castellated nuts on there, or just normal nuts, so you're not undoing them all the time. You just do them up finger tight, but make sure everything's tight when you do your checks. Also, I'm not sure if you can see, but you want to get as close to my ailerons are at neutral. So level with the white, horizontal white tube. Torch is playing up. Have your triangle bell crank level with this tube on both sides. Then, if for argument's sake you have more up than down, you adjust your short rod. Same as a servo on a model aircraft. And just go one turn, because that has a bit of like a 1 degree. Say you have 16 up and 12 down, that'll become a short rod adjustment, just to adjust the geometry. But then check everything else. The other big issue I found is when you go to full flap, obviously this rotates down, and then the eye end, rod eye end, will hit the rod eye end there on your triangle. Imagine if this all rolls down, and then you go, it's okay, but if you go full flap and full aileron deflection, in this case on this side where the gusset goes, the bell crank goes down, then the bell crank will sort of jackknife with the eye end. So the fix I did there was I put a longer bolt. I put an AN5 up in there, AN5-12 longer bolt with 2 washers and your normal spacer setup. That gave me enough clearance with full aileron and full flap. So you go into the bottom of your banana slot basically. Now the other issue I had, I put this on one of the posts, but just get a lot of silly answers. I put a bit of rubber. So this is my elevator bell crank, up and down elevator, and the rudder cable. What I found, when you go across, you go full across, your rudder cable can quite easily snag around the, or potentially snag around the split pin on your elevator bell crank pivot bolt. So I've just put a bit of rubber with zip ties. The zip ties can't slide because this bell crank, if you're familiar with it,
There's like 1 inch at the top and 3 inches at the bottom, so it's tapered in the right directions, so they can't really slide down anymore. I just didn't like, on the odd occasion you go full aileron, you can see it touches the cable. Yeah, I know all the smart people say turn the bolt around, but that just moves the problem to the other side. So, just trying to help out the next bloke, I guess. That's where we're at with the aileron rigging. Just do it in small increments, write everything down, just have a play, make some adjustments to get a result, and then you know what's doing what. But just bear in mind when you change, say for instance, like I said, you change neutral on your flap, then that changes your flap travel. So that's the other question, I guess. If you have too much flap, which you probably will, you can wind this in or out, which will slightly adjust your flap travel. But then go back, recheck everything, recheck your triangles, don't hit the eye-ends, and make sure you still got your aileron travel. And then finally, I just came back with my aileron stops, you can see down in there, with the 2 A and 3 bolts. So with those, it was just a matter of, I elongated the slots, so hold your flaps at, or flaperon at 13 degrees, slide the L angle across and do it up. Alright, one other consideration there guys with the rigging, if you're on the upper limits of basically everything, you might find you drop your flaps and they over travel. That's an adjustment on the flap rod end, but you also have to be careful. So if your flaps over travel and then you go full aileron, believe it or not, your donkey dick here can actually hit the wing. Don't ask me how I know that. So just pay attention to that as well when you are initially rigging. Bang, bang, what's that hitting? It's probably this hitting the wing. So just go slow on your rig. So there you go guys, got the flaperons rigged. I looked at that, what I'm trying to say is don't underestimate the work that's going to be involved in getting your flaperons rigged up properly. I spent a couple of days I guess, or a couple of sessions, not a couple of days, just up in the hellhole back and forth, and doing it by yourself, you're forever up and down, up and down. Lay your ruler on your outboard flaperon, mark your fuselage. I think I showed previously, I had the cardboard there. It just saves you rechecking neutral all the time. Just put the flaperon back there. Use carpenter measurements as opposed to digital measurements, otherwise you'd drive yourself crazy. Another little thing I found too is if you can get a mate to, or you do it yourself, rather than just grab the flaperon, rather than just push the flaperon like that, you're better off, or it's more accurate, to move the joystick. You get a different reading for some reason. I use this little digital magic box just to sit on there and you can zero it. So if that was 0, press 0, 13, 13 each way. Worked pretty well. However, this thing is so accurate, it sort of drives you a bit balmy. And simply flexing the skin, there's a degree there I guess. So just marked it with tape and got the desired result in the end. I'm happy with it. So I've got neutral, I've got 13 degrees each way on the aileron. Just a reminder that the aileron stops, for those who haven't done this before, but obviously one stop does the up travel on one side but also the down travel on the other side, and vice versa. So persevere, you'll get there at the end. I got very frustrated with it. And it's probably why there's not a lot of information out there. It's not as easy as it seems, but stick to your standards, and you know, at the end of the day, then I went and got all new nylock nuts, put them on there, 1 or 2 thread safety, whatever is in your local area, whatever the standard is. Washers on everywhere, the bushes are on there. Now I go through every conceivable sort of position, if you like, and just wiggle the push rods to make sure the eye ends are free. Should cover it, hopefully. So hopefully that will help someone out. A little bit clunky, that video. Like I said at the start, it was going to be like a bit of a step by step, how to get there, but you sort of get lost. But just make small increments, sneak up on it, a little bit of time, and you'll have
nice and straight. Chances are when we go and test fly this, I'll come back and just give it 2 tweaks of ailer and trim or something anyway. But that's my ballpark figure. Hope you enjoyed that one. Thanks for watching.